Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Paleo Solution Podcast. Before we get to the fun, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors. Hey guys, just wanted to share a pretty cool success story from one of our students in the Keto Masterclass. This is from Jessica. She says, "Hey guys, keto freaking rocks. I just finished week 3 following the ketogenic diet and I'm down 17 pounds. Never in the history of ever have I been able to lose weight like this. It's pretty cool. I've tried every diet known to man, and when I was basically starving myself, I couldn't drop weight like this. I feel fantastic. I still have a long ways to go, but I have no doubt I will get there. Just wanted to give you an update. The information in the Keto Masterclass really helped me, and I appreciate your approach. Have a great day." So that's awesome. Every once in a while, it's great to get a shot in the arm like this. For me, the whole goal of creating something like the Keto Masterclass is to help people just achieve the goals that they have. And although keto is not a one-size-fits-all approach, it doesn't work the same way for all people. It's not the appropriate tool for all people. For the right folks, the right situation, and particularly if they follow the rules that we lay out within the Keto Masterclass, it really works well. So thank you, Jess. Thank you to the rest of you that have supported us with this. Keep us posted on your progress.
Want to go keto, but not quite sure where to start? Be like Jess. Get Keto Masterclass and skip the confusion. Go to ketomasterclass.com/ready to learn more.
Hey folks, welcome back. Another edition of the Paleo Solution Podcast. I am here with my lovely, amazing co-host, Nikki Violetti. Wife, how you doing?
And sometimes a pain in your ass, I guess, too.
Well, you know, on days that end in Y.
You make me sound so nice.
So not like who you really are.
Nice.
Nikki definitely wears her heart on her sleeve. When we owned a gym, and then when we ceased to own a gym, people still liked us, but they did say that when they showed up at the gym, they were curious what Nikki they were going to experience that day.
In all fairness, I while I loved parts of running a gym, it was not
a good fit.
It was not my calling. I kind of got roped into it when I met you. So
I'm still curious. Why did you even?
I don't know.
Is it really the Chico State effect? Like the fact that there were 5 women for every one dude there?
No, it wasn't that. I didn't go to Chico State. I was just
You
there.
were in Chico,
I was
though.
just there,
like
yeah.
the dating pool was
I know.
limited.
Well,
to be honest.
Well, and then the tapered acid wash jeans and big arms, that wasn't really the look I was going for at that time either.
Well,
but somehow you bamboozled me.
you were vegan at the time, so I was very much a departure
Rob is very
from that,
persuasive. So. He's charismatic and persuasive. I'm sure you all.
I had to make up something because I'm not good looking. So yeah. Anyway,
okay,
enough of our background.
This is a big diversion.
So we have a pretty good list of stuff here. Props to Chris, a.k.a. Squatchy, for curating these things. Thank you, folks, for continuing to send in great questions. Like I really enjoy doing these, and you seem to, and folks seem to be enjoying the new format. So thank you again for helping us to help you.
Right. All right.
You
ready
in?
to jump in?
Yeah.
I'm ready to jump in. Okay. So our first question is on fasting and silent reflux. And this question is from Kristin. Can't thank Rob enough for the impact he has had on my health. I have been following him for years, paleo for 5 years before doing the carb tests in Wired to Eat. Much to my surprise, I was sensitive to every single carb I tested. I immediately went the keto route and have been so thankful. Not only have I lost 32 pounds and feel a lot better, this has greatly benefited my vision. I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I was shocked by how much worse my vision was during the carb testing. I feel that learning this will definitely help prevent my vision loss from progressing as rapidly as it would have with higher carbs. My mom is almost totally blind, so I'm doing everything I can to prevent the same fate. Now, after about 8 months of keto, I discovered I have silent reflux. I was baffled as I have never had any problems like this before. I tried everything, the supplements, raising the bed, eliminating foods, and nothing helped. Then we went on an 8-day cruise and my reflux was gone. It dawned on me that I was eating 3 meals a day instead of my usual 2 within a 6-hour window. I've continued to eat 3 meals a day since returning home and still no reflux. My problem is that my fasting blood sugar is higher than it was while I was fasting. It's not terrible, but I'm noticing a bit worse vision while it is higher. I'm normally in the 70s or 80s and now regularly in the 90s. So her question is, what is your thought on a possible correlation between fasting and silent reflux? I am a healthy weight. I don't drink, don't smoke, and don't even drink coffee. I started fasting about a year ago, so that wasn't anything new. I likely had reflux for a while before I realized it. And on another side note, like Rob, I was also on a form of tetracycline for many years as a teenager. Is SIBO something I should consider as a cause of the reflux after that much antibiotic use? Sorry this is so long. I just felt some of the details were necessary. I really appreciate everything you do, and I can honestly say that you have tremendously impacted our entire family's health.
That's awesome. Well, it's awesome that we've had some impact, not that Kristin is having some problems here. I do, before we launch into this, just want to throw out there that one of the things that I personally have noticed when when the safe starch topic was kind of big, Paul Jaminet, who I love, he's a brilliant guy, was talking about that whole thing. Like, one of the first things that I noticed was that my vision was kind of blurry, and I had some vision problems fiddling around with this stuff. And it's one of the things that I notice almost immediately if I kind of get over the tips of my skis with regards to the amount of carbohydrate intake. And if you do some poking around and look at, say, like macular degeneration and some other kind of eye pathology that's really easy to visually kind of diagnose, it is a really early indicator of these kind of metabolic syndromes, high blood sugar kind of scenarios. And I think it's an underappreciated diagnostic tool. And also one of these things that, eating an appropriate carb level for one's ability to manage those carbs, it's a really huge benefit. So that's that part. On the fasting and reflux part, we have definitely seen a lot of folks that are trying to push these time-restricted feeding windows, and they end up eating rather large meals and fewer of them, and they end up with some GI problems. Like, not everybody is the case, though. Like, some people notice that their digestion is better, and this is kind of where I default back to how do you look, how do you feel, how do you perform, and we might throw the performance piece in this bucket because digestion is not performing as well. The concern about the fasting blood sugar, this is where I would default back to looking at more than just the fasting blood sugar. What is the overall blood sugar story? And this is where I would look at A1C and also fructosamine in addition to the fasting blood sugar, because even though it may be fasting in this little window, it may in fact not be problematic in the greater scheme of things. And so that's what I would look at. I forgot to put the notes in here, but we do have a link to Specialty Health, where we have the recommended blood work from Wired to Eat, and within that recommended blood work, it includes lipoprotein analysis, but also this A1C and fructosamine, and so we'll get a link to that. So what I would recommend, Kristin, is checking that out and see where you are in that story, and let's just track that maybe every 3 to 6 months and see where things are going. The A1C gives us a picture of blood sugar over time. Fructosamine is a secondary validation on that advanced glycation end products. For some people, their red blood cells last significantly longer under a low-carb dietary approach, and so it can artificially make the A1C look elevated, and so we use the fructosamine to kind of triangulate in on that. And so between the combination of fructosamine, A1C, and fasting blood sugar, we should get a pretty good picture on that. And let's do that, and then maybe you can report back, let us know what that stuff looks like, and we can kind of keep an eye on this over time. If all of this ends up being a situation where the digestion is better, but the blood sugar on average is a bit higher, then maybe what we do is a little bit of exercise pre or post meal, on more meals than not. And I mean, this can be taking a quick walk. It could do, 50 squats, 50 push-ups against the counter. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, and it ends up knocking the blood sugar down. So there are some mitigating strategies that we can do to help with that. But for, focusing on good digestion would be smart. And yeah, there certainly could be some SIBO issues here. Always love to recommend Dr. Michael Ruscio's book, Healthy Gut, Healthy You. We will throw that in the show notes as well. And just keep us posted, and we'll get back to you. And Nikki is rapidly taking notes on that. Yeah.
Okay. So our second question is on is regarding a keto protocol for lower belly fat or excess skin, and this is from Peter. He says, "Hey, Rob and Nikki, I'm loving the return of the Q&A and especially the addition of Nikki." Thanks, Peter. He says, "Now I can get my girlfriend to listen without her feeling like I'm jamming my male-centric, unorthodox health podcast down her throat. No offense, Rob, but now she can relate."
Triggered.
I've been keto for a while, loved the tips from the masterclass, and recently finished the Keto Gains boot camp with Luis. Both led to a big transformation, 22% body fat down to 13% and still going.
Wow.
It's really cool. I only lost about 4 pounds, but put on a bunch of lean muscle. This is so cool because so many times people get stuck at that scale weight and they fixate on that and they're like, I'm not losing weight, but it's not the whole story. So Peter, you're describing this beautifully.
Yeah, and we'll do just a quick diversion here. When you go through the Keto Gains boot camp, they recommend that you weigh daily and report that. And in
the Keto Masterclass, we recommend weighing monthly.
and now and there's really good reasons for that. Do you want to flesh some of that out?
Well, we just noticed frequently back when we had the gym that people that would step on the scale every day would just get so obsessed over that number, and your body weight fluctuates daily depending on your sleep, depending on, did
you have a bowel movement or not?
Yeah, a whole host of things. So what we really want to focus on is the trend. Is it trending down? Obviously, most people, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose, you want to pay attention to the scale weight. But more importantly, how are your clothes fitting? Is your body composition changing in a favorable direction? Because like Peter, he's lost only 4 pounds, but he's dropped almost 10% body fat. That's a huge transformation.
Right.
When you look at if he had a before picture and an after picture, it would be like a dramatic difference.
Right. And so in the Keto Gains example, they are coaching you daily. It's a high touch program, and this is part of the benefit of this thing. With something like the Keto Masterclass, we do the best that we can to try to support people every day, but there's kind of a reality, like it's
an online program.
It's an online program.
It's not as high touch. And,
yeah. And so we've found that a monthly. So people will say, should I weigh daily or monthly? And in the Keto Gains process, it totally makes sense to do that daily weighing because you've got a coach.
They can talk you off the ledge.
Totally.
You're like, I'm 5 pounds up from yesterday and I'm doing everything right.
Yeah. Whereas with the Keto Masterclass, even though we answer questions all the time online, and like I answer this question a lot, there's still kind of a reality that folks can kind of spin out. And so we have tended to only do a monthly weight check-in, with really encouraging people, though, to how do your clothes fit, take photos about as often as you want and all that type of stuff. But it's just kind of an interesting diversion. Like, even though we and the Keto Gains folks super tight, a huge synergy within the programs, because the Masterclass is a low-touch offering comparatively, we're trying to deal with the neuroses of weight change by looking at it less frequently, whereas in a heavily coached environment, it makes sense to track that every day. So just as an aside.
I think in your first book you said you had a line, something to the effect of like, take your scale and give it to someone you don't like.
Well, we saw that, yeah. I said put a bow on it and give it to the, use it once and then give it away and then, go to their house to check it. And again, like in the gym setting, we would see people pretty frequently, but people can get so spun out. Like there's this expectation that every single day you should see downward trends in weight. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And so you have to figure out.
Or in the beginning, especially on a keto diet, people will
really
lose a lot
of
easy weight in the first couple weeks, and then they think that they're stalled and they're plateaued and something's wrong. And it's like, no, you lost that initial water weight, which is totally normal and typical. And then you're still making positive gains, but it might not show up on the scale every single day.
Right, and particularly if you're doing a smart resistance training program and gaining muscle mass at the same time, which is really like, man, that's what you want. Lose fat, gain muscle. There is nobody is without like significant anabolic use or something is going to blow up into this huge, bodybuilder. And so I could argue that there's virtually no one who wouldn't benefit from gaining 2 to 5 pounds of muscle and losing 2 to 5 pounds of fat. Like it's a rare individual that wouldn't benefit from that. Yeah. Sorry, just as an aside.
Okay, now we get into Peter's question. He says, okay, here's my question. Most of my fat is held in my lower belly flab. I've never been this lean, but I've also never been super fat, nor did I lose a bunch of weight really fast. Point being, I'm not sure if I'm dealing with excess fat or skin, but I don't care because it's flabby. Plainly put, how can I get rid of this? I swear, Rob, at one point I heard you talking about a ketogenic diet with limited protein and prolonged fasting for obese people that have lost a lot of weight and have excess skin, even in place of skin surgery. I'm curious, could this approach possibly be a good protocol for getting rid of last amounts of skin flab fat once one has achieved a desired body comp? For example, if I get to single-digit body fat and still have the flab, could I bump up my fat macros and reduce protein? If so, what might those macros in the protocol look like? Basically, I want to look like the shredded and tight animal that is always timidly posting shirtless selfies to the Robb Wolf Instagram account. You know, the writer that killed an elk with a stick on iCaveman. I'll have what he's having. That's awesome, Peter. Anyways, love what you all do. You've been the pioneers of a revolution and helped a lot of people. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, I'm always trying to remind Nikki of stuff like that, but she's so completely unimpressed with me. It doesn't really improve my status. So, you know, it's really a bummer because I had Tyler and Luis from Keto Gains here in Reno a couple of months back, and we were, I thought, recording a podcast, and in fact, the whole thing didn't record. It recorded like 5 minutes, and the damn thing turned off. And we talked a lot about this. So some folks like Jason Fung, who I respect, he has some controversial ideas occasionally, and that are at kind of 90-degree angles with what the Keto Gains guys recommend. Dr. Fung has made this case that fasting in particular may be a strategy for dealing with this loose skin issue. And the idea being is that if you're in a caloric deficit and a low protein environment, that the body is going to get really thrifty at recycling and reusing that protein, and so it's going to break down all the collagen and loose skin and tighten stuff up. I honestly don't know where the truth is in all that. And this is where, like, I was having a conversation on Twitter the other day with a vegan doctor who we were kind of going back and forth about lipoproteins and cholesterol. And I had made the comment that in some instances, elevated lipoproteins and cholesterol appear to be protective against certain types of cancer. And this guy just freaked out. And so I showed him a bunch of the research on it, and he was like, this is really perplexing, because he's definitely in this camp that, like, all fat is bad, cholesterol should be effectively zero, and, in my opinion, not super well educated. But the point that I was making to him is that in biological terms, there's always trade-offs. It's not a white hat, black hat deal. It's kind of like, what do you want to accomplish? What if you go this way, what's the trade-off that you're giving up elsewhere? And in this story, like the idea around fasting to deal with that loose skin, the upside, if this is true, is that we would deal with this loose skin. Like, there are many people that need to go in and get post-weight loss surgery to deal with the loose skin. So in theory, this low-protein environment could deal with that. The downside is that you will lose lean body mass in the process. This is part of what we're losing. That loose skin technically is kind of loose lean body mass in a kind of a technical idea. Even though adipose tissue is mainly lipids, mainly fat, there's a bunch of protein matrices that tie all that stuff together, and that's what's getting broken down and recycled. So,
and you'd also be losing, like, actual muscle mass too, right?
Muscle mass, bone density, all that stuff. And so this is the kind of compare and contrast, whereas in a protein-sparing modified fast, you could really make a credible argument that we keep protein at a very high level comparatively, and then this is going to all but prevent any muscle mass loss, particularly if we have some smart strength training, going on in the background of this. And so I honestly don't know what the ultimate story is here. Like, that said, I don't know what the total trade-off is with this. Like, there's an example of a guy who was on a 382-day medically supervised fast. They gave him water, vitamins, and electrolytes. And otherwise, the guy didn't consume any calories, and he did this again for 382 days. And this guy had absolutely no loose skin left at the end of this at all. This guy was comparatively young when he did this. I think that that's definitely a factor. He was large enough in starting that I think he had, just when you're overweight, because of carrying that extra weight around, you actually carry oftentimes a decent amount of lean muscle mass. So, he had kind of a buffer in that regard. And so this is kind of a tough thing. I wish I had a more concrete answer to provide on this. But, what I, again, might throw out there is that there are probably trade-offs in this story. There may be some people for whom that fasted approach will, in fact, result in a scenario in which we deal with this loose, flabby skin. And other people, it may not work. And it's always within the context that, we may be losing lean muscle mass in the process, which is something that's really, really concerning to me. So, again, I wish I had a more concrete answer than that. But, I see this being a lot of potential trade-offs. And I don't have a really definitive answer about this is good, that's bad, this is the thing that I would do. Certainly, you could play around with doing a couple of days that look like a protein-sparing modified fast. And then you could do a couple of days of just straight up fasting too. And particularly if you're in that keto-adapted state, you should mitigate and minimize how much lean body mass you do lose during those fasted periods. But you do still lose lean body mass. Depending on the person's size, you'll lose about 1/3 of a pound of muscle per day. This is a lot less than somebody who's not keto adapted, but I mean, it is still a thing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Okay. Let's see. Our next question is from Mike on the topic of Terrahydrate, which I have never heard of. Hopefully you have, Rob. Mike says, you guys know anything about Terrahydrate? Good, bad, or snake oil?
I had, in fact, not heard of this. And so with the aid of Dr. Google, I did some poking around on it, and it appears to be a product that might have some efficacy in improving tight junctions with intestinal permeability. So I have personally not tinkered with it. I did look at some of the primary literature as well as kind of the claims that go along with the commercial products, but it seems to have some efficacy behind it for intestinal permeability.
Is there a way to... could they measure? How do they measure that? How are they substantiating their claims?
It gets complex. Like you're looking at things like the rate of LPS translocation into the circulation, which is a really tough assay to do. So I mean, it's a little bit tough, but also you can kind of assess it just by like kind of clinical symptoms. Do you have better blood sugar management? Do people generally feel better? Do we see reductions in inflammatory markers? None of that stuff is perfect. Like looking at C-reactive protein can be as misleading as it is informative, depending on, you have to really, read the tea leaves on that. So it
could be something to try.
Could be
see
something
if you
to
notice
tinker with,
anything,
for sure.
And then.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how expensive it is. Might be.
It's not super expensive,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. And doesn't appear to have any significant toxicity, side effects, all that stuff. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Moving from Terrahydrate to emu oil. Don says, I have listened to a couple podcasts about Walkabout emu oil and how great it is. I haven't been able to find where you've ever mentioned this supplement. What are your thoughts on it? If it is as great as it sounds, then would you still have to take fish or cod liver oil, or could you just take the emu oil since it has omega-3s? My main goal is to assist my paleo keto diet in fighting inflammation from PCOS. Yeah,
it's funny, like emu oil is one of these things that was really popular maybe mid-90s within the supplement scene, and I guess this stuff kind of goes in and out of vogue, but it's used both topically and internally. Interestingly, the topical application, there have been some studies that suggest that it decreases potential skin damage in folks undergoing radiation therapy. Like they've used it topically for breast cancer patients, and it's not like a magic cure-all, but it does appear to mitigate the radiation-induced damage in these skin cells from radiation exposure. There is some indication that it reduces inflammation on a systemic level, likely due to the omega-3 fat content, reduces various interleukins. So it does seem to have some kind of immune modulating effects, some anti-inflammatory effects. I don't know. I would have to look closer at the total amount of omega-3s and the ratio, if any, of EPA to DHA. And I think that this varies from product to product to some degree as to whether or not it could completely supplant your fish oil intake. That would be a tough one to perfectly pin down, but it does look like it's pretty legit stuff. Like there are absolutely applications for it. Some of the claims when you poke around like the commercial sites are pretty hyperbolic and over the top, as many of these things tend to be. But yeah, it's a legit supplement and definitely could be helpful. And maybe we should grow some emu on the Lazy Lobo Ranch. I don't know.
I seem to remember that somebody had an emu farm in between Robb Wolf and Redding.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. It went tits up. It didn't go anywhere. No, people like chicken, but they don't like velociraptor-sized birds, apparently. So yeah.
I grew up in Red Bluff, California, and Rob grew up in Redding. We didn't meet until after college in Chico. But we would always drive to Redding because that's where the mall was, and
the big city of Redding.
And there was, in fact, an emu farm.
There was
off the I-5.
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s, emu meat was going to be like the super lean red meat and all this stuff. But yeah, it never caught on.
Gotcha. Just like cricket protein.
Yes.
That's in process, I guess. Okay, next question from James on the topic of avoiding sunburn during excessive sun exposure at work. So he says, hey, Rob and Nikki, really enjoying the Q&A format. Here's my question. I travel a lot for work, and in the coming months, I'll be traveling to some fairly hot, sunny countries, Mexico, Chile, and Pakistan. My work involves me being outdoors at sports stadiums for full days on end with very little shelter, and due to my Northern European genetics, I don't do well with intense sun exposure in the short term. However, having previously lived in Australia for a year, I adapted well, being able to moderate my exposure, and within a few months was able to spend hours outside without burning. I would like to avoid using sunscreen where possible and enjoy the full benefits of the sun on my skin during my working days. And as such, how can I precondition my body to tolerate these intense bursts of sun exposure when I live in a predominantly cloudy, cold country? I'm thinking vitamin D supplementation, possibly intelligent use of UV tanning beds. Any dietary tweaks worth considering? Thanks in advance. Kind regards.
Yeah, so this is kind
and
of...
he says, hope there's no flies in here. Is he referring to our Tony?
Tony!
We got flies.
We got flies. Oh, man. So this is interesting stuff. When I did the Caveman show, just to give a little nod to... your husband who killed a 648-pound elk with a hand-thrown spear. I went into that show, I'm a coward at heart, and I knew there were going to be certain things happening. One, that we were going to starve. Two, that we were going to be exposed to some really significant UV. We were at 8,000, almost 9,000 feet in the Colorado mountains and early summer, and so I knew that was going to be a problem. So I started poking around on kind of supplements that can help with UV exposure, and a couple of the things that popped up are a product called zeaxanthin and astaxanthin. So if you're familiar with pink flamingos, they are pink because of the marine carotenoids found in the food that they eat, and if you don't feed the flamingos these pink carotenoids from the food they eat, then they aren't pink. And this stuff, interestingly, can provide a pretty interesting buffer with regards to UV exposure. I don't know if it would be like a 4 or a 10 or exactly how you would quantify that, but and this is very much an N=1 deal, but out of the cast of folks on that Caveman show, I literally was the only person who did not end up with blistered lips and really significant sunburns. And we even had a couple of people who are African-American, dark-complected, live in LA, get outside a lot, and they sunburned. And so the zeaxanthin, astaxanthin supplements, I think, are a really legit adjunct to the diet. They're a fat-soluble product, and so you would want to eat that with a fatty meal, and you could take that prophylactically before heading out. I would probably start taking it a couple of weeks at least before heading out to a location, because it takes a while for all this stuff to get associated with your lipid membranes and whatnot. Very recently, I was pinged by some folks who have a product. It's called sundots.com. It's a extract of Polypodium leucotomus. It's a fern extract, and this actually has some clinical trials demonstrating that it will help mitigate UV damage to skin and basically like extend the amount of time that you can be out in the sun without burning. You will eventually burn, but you know, if whatever, let's say you could spend 15 minutes in the sun because you're very, very light complected, it may extend it to 30 minutes. And again, this is just kind of, you know, guesstimates, but I would recommend exploring this Sundots product. I have not used that, don't have any financial ties to it. I'm actually going to talk to these folks in a couple of days, and then I would definitely track down a zeaxanthin, astaxanthin product, which we have some links to that. Again, no financial ties, just recommending that you check that stuff out. And then in general, eating kind of an anti-inflammatory diet. Like, this is one of the things that we've noticed, and even with our kids, like, if we all, compared to when I ate differently, you know, pre-20 years ago, if I got a burn, man, I burned and like peeled, and there was all kinds of problems with it and everything. And I'm careful with sun exposure. Mainly I try to get my appropriate dose, and then I'll do a big brimmed hat and, you know, like rash guards or long sleeve shirts. I really try not to use sunblock per se unless we're like at the ocean and we're, you know, you're getting sunlight reflected left, right, and center, and then I'll use some on the still exposed surfaces.
Like it on my face. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to your faces.
Yeah.
Wrinkles.
Wrinkles. Yeah. So those are kind of the mitigating strategies that I would recommend. A really good anti-inflammatory diet, and again, eating things that are really rich in dark colored chemicals like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, tomatoes. All of these carotenoids and kind of dark colored constituents seem to have some kind of built-in UV protection to some degree. And again, it's you know, this is not going to let you go out in midday sun at the equator. If you're, you know, Danish in origin, you're going to have some.
Have to ramp up.
You have to ramp up and have some mitigating strategies. And you did, James did mention like the use of tanning beds. The data on this is really kind of unfortunate. It appears that UV tanning bed use is overall a bad idea. Like, it just consistently comes back as being a bad idea. But one of the things that I've had problems wrapping my head around, most of these studies don't really consider the dose response time. Like, it's general use. And when people are generally using these things, they're trying to get pretty damn brown. I still can't help but wonder if, like, you know, if you were, let's say you're 2 weeks out from getting into a very sunny environment. Let's say on day one, you know, you buy like a 20 punch card deal to go to a tanning booth. On day one, you go in for 30 seconds. On day two, you go in for a minute. On day three, you go in for a minute and 30 seconds. You know, like,
really ramp it up slowly.
Really ramp it up slowly. I can't. Again, this is complete guessing. I'm sure there's a bunch of dermatologists that would just freak out, but I can't help but this is kind of like just getting in shape for an athletic event or something, you know, like a minimal dose to just kind of get all the enzyme systems ramped up, like you're starting to encourage the melanocytes to produce whatever degree of skin protection you can get going in that regard. You know, here's one interesting aside. I would, when you start getting out in the sun a lot, I would pay particular attention to making sure that you get enough folate, enough methylated folic acid. Part of the evolutionary trade-off between the production of vitamin D and tanning is the degradation of folate. So people exposed to a lot of sun can actually end up folate deficient because the folate gets degraded due to photo exposure. So that is something that's not specifically related to sunburn protection, but is a factor when somebody is out in the sun a lot.
Awesome.
Is that it for today?
I think that's our final question for today.
Okay. Do you have any closing words of wisdom or?
No. No.
No? Okay. Alrighty. It's kind of funny. Nikki can't stop talking at me, but she gets a little shy around you guys. So, hey, thank you all again. Hopefully look forward to seeing you in real life at some point soon here.
Again, follow us on Das Robb Wolf on Instagram, Facebook.
At Robb Wolf on Twitter. And then, yeah, like I'm doing a lot of Q&A, folks popping up over at the robbwolf.com online, I think is my Facebook gig. So yeah. Okay. Talk to you soon, guys. Thanks again for listening to the Paleo Solution Podcast. Here's a quick message from one of our sponsors.
Were your main problems falling asleep, or would you be able to fall asleep but then wake up in the middle of the night and then stay awake?
All of the above. If it's related to sleep, I'm bad at it.
Bob is a former Navy SEAL who at one point went an entire week without sleep.
During my first deployment, I could say I started developing insomnia and was completely reliant on pharmaceuticals for sleep. During that time, my sleep kept getting worse and worse. And in that time period is when I went for that week without sleep. I was having memory loss issues, energy issues, a lot of PTSD symptoms.
Then Bob went to see Doc Parsley.
And then he got me on his regimen, his sleep cocktail. And that's really the first thing, aside from just, really sedative pharmaceuticals, that helped me sleep in a meaningful way.
Dr. Kirk Parsley created the sleep cocktail for those Navy SEALs like Bob who were coming to him for help. Now that same product is available for the rest of us. Go to robbwolf.com/sleep cocktail and use code ROBBWOLF10 to save 10%.